financial freedom is not having to worry about money, not having to contain yourself or basically keep yourself as a prisoner of the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, and to be able to be free, whether it's just for yourself, for your family. I mean, realistically, my advice is not about an overnight success. It's about embracing the process of personal growth and gaining financial literacy, and in order to live life to its fullest.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins.
What a wonderful conversation today. This combination is amazing. Today's guest is not only a personal injury attorney, but also a real estate investor. I get to drop the questions that I've been wanting to ask for so long about how do I protect myself? What entity do I use? How do I structure an entity? Just so many questions. What a great conversation. Not only is today's guest, is she a real estate investor and a personal injury attorney, she's also an author. The new book comes out here in June of 2024, Lady Shark, How to Become a Millionaire in Your 30s. We're going to talk about how to overcome self-doubt. So much this conversation. Everybody, please welcome Chrissy Grigoropoulos to the show. All right, Chrissy G, welcome to the show. I don't even know where to start with this. I'm so excited. I've got so many questions for you. Are you ready?
Ready.
Awesome. Well, thanks, first of all, for your time. I'm so happy that our team's connected and we're able to have this conversation today. So for the listeners out there today, Chrissy, just give everybody just a really quick summary of your professional life and kind of where that started and where are you at now?
All right. Thanks so much for having me, Brett. So the journey's been long and short at the same time. I have my doctorate just for the Juris Doctorate, so not as fun as MDs, but I'm an attorney, to say the least. I'm also a corporate real estate broker, meaning that I have a corporation that I'm able to have other agents work under me and kind of work with commercial, residential, sales, purchases, different acquisitions, and we're able to help people that are looking to purchase real estate, sell real estate, guide them accordingly. I also fix and flip houses on the side. That's fun. Definitely more of a hobby that's turned into a fruitful way of adding some extra income too.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the JD path, what was is your specialty in law?
Sure. I'm a personal injury attorney. So I am handling all injury cases. We have 3 offices here in New York, one that's on the border of Brooklyn and Queens, one that's in the Bronx, and our newest office, the biggest one, is in Nassau County in Hempstead, right by all the courts. And we handle any type of injury. We handle whether they're injured on the job, whether it's a construction accident, car accident, ceiling collapse, trip and fall, all that fun stuff. So we work hand in hand with a lot of physicians. We do also no-fault recovery, which is when the doctors aren't getting paid from the insurance companies for their bills. We fight for them and we get them that money through that route as well.
So I love this direction because I have so many questions for you as a property owner, as an investor who I guess would dread or ever fear going up in court in a situation of personal injury on any of our properties. So I definitely want to go there with you. But before we get there, there's something called Lady Shark, How to Become a Millionaire in Your 30s.
Yes.
Where does this come with the law path and real estate? Like, where did this Lady Shark? This is a book, right?
Yes. So the newest addition to my resume is I'm also now an author. My book will be coming out on June 11th. If you go to theladyshark.com, you can grab a copy or get yourself on the list to get a copy. And basically, I'm the guru of everyone coming to me for knowledge, information, not only with real estate, which is a huge chunk of it, but how to make money, how to get from your 9-to-5 paycheck to paycheck to more financial freedom. So I figured, why not get a book together and give it to the world and hope that, it can help more people than just my inner circle.
Mhm.
I've had a lot of help along the way, so I try to, give back.
That's awesome. So congratulations on that. That's a journey and a feat of itself too. But one of the coolest things, like you say, now you can the giving back. Obviously, you're going to make money on this book. I
And
mean,
we pray.
yeah. As an author, that is one of the most beautiful things. Getting that Amazon check every month is a beautiful thing. So a piece of passive income in and of itself. But that is written, that will forever be written. And this is information now that can continue and get outside of your reach, outside of your circle. So that is so cool. Thank you for sharing all of that information.
Of course.
In this book, talking about financial freedom, obviously there's lots of things that go into that. Mindset is definitely step number one. I preach that like all the time, mindset. But then financial literacy, all of this stuff. For you, what does financial freedom mean?
So financial freedom is not having to worry about money, not having to contain yourself or basically keep yourself as a prisoner of the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, and to be able to be free, whether it's just for yourself, for your family. I mean, realistically, my advice is not about an overnight success. It's about embracing the process of personal growth and gaining financial literacy, and in order to live life to its fullest.
Yeah, I heard Ray Dalio, I think I'm saying his name right, in the book Principles mention this, or he mentions it often, struggle well. Struggle well is a piece of like, and it gives me goosebumps to say it because it's ups and downs, right? It's even when you're not struggling check to check or forced by check to check. It's not all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns flying around, but that ability to keep that long-term perspective, delay gratification, focusing in on your systems, where there's pain, you need reflection, and then make the change, but implement again. Like all of these things coming back with the idea of struggling well in the long-term perspective.
Right. Exactly.
Struggling
I
well
think that you need to have a plan. I mean, it's always nice to have income while you're sleeping or spending time with your family or stepping away. As my first baby, I call my businesses my babies. My first baby was the law firm, and as a professional, you work so hard to get your license and to get accomplished as, just having a license and being able to provide the information to the public. It's hard to relinquish control and have actual people that can help build you up as a business and as a stable venture that you are able to step away from. And I think that is huge when it comes to both medical practices as well as medical centers and things of that nature. I have a friend that started with small physical therapy offices. He now owns a hospital in New Jersey, and he keeps growing and growing. But you start somewhere.
Yeah. Question just popped in my mind. What's Chrissy G like in the courtroom? Like you do trials, right? You do trial,
Yes.
you do case. So what's like? Give us just a snapshot of the Chrissy G that we don't want to face as a landlord or a property investor who hasn't dotted our I's and crossed our T's. What is that like? Who is Chrissy G
Um,
like at that moment?
You always want to play nice prior to entering in the courtroom and try to settle things and negotiate things appropriately, because relationships really are key in any business that you have. You'd be surprised how quickly you cross paths with people that you think you'll be seeing one time, and then they'll be repetitive and repetitive. Even though New York, I call New York the personal injury capital of the world, it's still very close knit, and where one person, everyone knows everyone. So I try to play nice, and if that's not able to happen and you're needing to go before a judge, I definitely leave nothing left, to be said. I try to keep going and going. I'll ask the judge, should I continue, until the point that the judge is like, I think we got it. I think we got it. It's never enough. That's how I look at it. You really want to try to advocate as much for your clients as you can, especially when you have the opportunity to be before a judge after COVID, with these times of, minimal
Zoom
in court
Zoom court,
time.
Zoom
Even
court.
physical court. A lot of it's Zoom
Yeah,
court, but when it comes to the
yeah,
big stuff and the more serious stuff, you're going in court.
yeah.
So once you have that
Fascinating
opportunity, you want to make the best of it.
how Zoom changed or how COVID changed our lives in that manner. It changed to the non-personal approach, and then everything kind of hung and stayed that way, especially with people wanting to work, all that kind of stuff. That's a whole nother show in of itself, Chrissy.
For sure.
What, how does this connection work from an attorney and then into a real estate investor? What was your first real estate acquisition?
So my father actually, aside from being an immigrant from Greece with fifth grade education, he actually started my knowledge of real estate, wished that I was a real estate attorney, after I finished law school, but it was just so boring. And he definitely showed me, along the way, what a good investment is when you're looking at properties, what's good to fix and flip versus having it in your portfolio for long-term growth, as far as, a rental property, a mixed use property where it's commercial and residential. Realistically, it's just diversifying your income. They always say that. I know that a big thing is your average millionaire has 6 or more sources of income. I don't think that happens initially. Personally, that's my opinion on it, because if you have 6 babies, imagine having 6 babies and having to give yourself to 6 babies. It's almost impossible in my world to do that. I'm sure people have done it before, but I think that you need to nurture and grow one baby at a time in order to have them, I guess, stand alone to a certain extent, because you do want to be a CEO of your business versus a physician or an actual attorney in your own business, in order to be able to then step away and start a different business. But the real estate venture definitely started after I was able to get on my own 2 feet. When it came to the business, in personal injury, it's a little bit harder because you don't really make any income until you close cases. So which can take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years or even more, depending on what type of case we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. I saw Alex Hermosi, and I'm sure a lot of people have done this, but if you think of your attention when you're talking about raising babies, your attention, use the glass, and inside of this glass there was, you can only get so much liquid in there. If that's your time, if that's your attention, and then if you had 6 cups set out, right, and you pour all of those out, just think of what little amount that you could give each cup, and then in that moment too, you look back at your cup. Guess what? Your cup is empty.
For sure.
Right? So finding that way to focus on making the one thing until you can then leverage, create systems, processes, introduce other people so that it can continue to grow without you, stably, confidently, based on the principles, back to Ray Dalio, and the values set forth to maintain. So that's really, really important. I just so enthralled in this idea of an attorney, and now you invest in real estate too. How does that allow you to protect yourself when you acquire and hold real estate then? What do you do differently than other people?
Well, you definitely need to be on top of your property as far as management wise, to make sure that there's not a defective sidewalk, defective entryways, defective lighting. You definitely become, I don't want to use the word paranoid, because you still want to be confident about everything's going to be okay and half glass full, or else negativity never helps anyone. But in reality, when you see the craziest types of stories, ceiling collapses, trip and falls downstairs because of no grips on stairs, because of marble stairs that there's no tread on. There's just such an array of variety of ways that clients, tenants, things of that nature, people of, entry, invitees can fall or injure themselves on your property. You try to protect yourself as best as possible, but in the least, you need a good insurance policy. You have to be confident with who you're carrying. I know that a lot of property owners, they're like, all right, let's just find who the cheapest is, and that's the best way. And sometimes, a penny short, dollar wise. What's the expression? You know where I'm going with that. So it's not always the best way to find the cheapest route when it comes to insurance, because you don't want them to try to work harder to disclaim the policy versus try to work harder to defend you and your entity, meaning the building and your assets.
That's so challenging. And insurance is a whole nother world. And watch out for those little tiny riders, those little tiny pieces of the policy that says, if this, then, and then you're like, oh no, and this may have been in that one situation. So yes, great advice there. Finding that insurance company or the provider or broker, yes, that works with you first is so important. That relationship is so important. I'm sure it's so hard to find as a property owner with multiple different policies. There's just so much opportunity to work with the wrong person or the wrong company, because ultimately when it comes down to it, between insurance companies and banks, those are the 2 biggest conglomerates of out to get their money consistently. And the number one rule of that scale is to not lose your money. Right. So that's a challenge. making sure that we've got the right insurance policy in place and looking at the little property management, maintenance kind of things.
Exactly.
Looking at those two things. What about the entity structure? Do you have any
Oh, for
suggestions for
sure. You never
property
want to use your
owners?
personal name. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's such a good point. Yep, I guess I bypassed that one because for me it's just logical, but
yeah.
huge. That's totally a big thing that needs to be focused on, especially when we're talking about professionals. Where if you're exposed personally, that's a huge thing. You want to make sure that there's no way to pierce the corporate veil, meaning that you're in a corporate entity. That corporate entity is performing and acting as such. Basically, what does that mean? It's easy to have a corporate entity, but then, maybe you go shopping at a certain store and you might use your corporate credit card, or you may dip into certain funds and use them for personal use. You want to really try to keep it separate and apart. You want to, let's say, have one corporate entity purchasing the property, and then you can, if let's say you're using, there's physicians. So let's say you're using part of your building that you now purchased as an acquisition as your own office or your own practice. You want to make sure that you are renting from the entity that purchased the property as another corporation. So you don't have any personal names anywhere, because God forbid there's a trip and fall outside. Not going to come after the building owner as well as the rentee. So if you're doing both of those things with your personal name, they're not coming after you personally, where there's umbrella policies of God knows how many. And unfortunately, more times than not, magically, there will be multiple surgeries on someone that knows that there's $10 million versus maybe $1 million or $500,000 of coverage, et cetera, et cetera. So you definitely want to protect yourself against personal liability.
And I've seen this so many different ways too, Chrissy, of like each property in the residential world getting their own LLC, or do I put up to 1 million and one, like there's so many different ways to do this. But even if there's just one, and you mentioned using the company funds basically for a personal expense, what if in these situations, oh, my mistake, I've used the wrong card, I've pulled the wrong card out of my wallet. What if I book that transaction in, like, say, QuickBooks as a personal disbursement or an owner disbursement? Does that still cross the line?
So that everything is fine lines and gray area. So mistakes do happen. You can explain them away. There could be, let's say you put a meal on a business card versus not. So, maybe you took a potential tenant out to dinner to discuss a business opportunity. There's different ways of doing it. I'm not an accountant, but trust me, I've paid enough taxes to know a little bit about these types of things. There's always ways of fixing it. Make sure you have somebody that's good, that's, able to handle your taxes and categorizing things appropriately. And I know that me in the beginning with my corporation, it's really difficult to distinguish which card to be using, which card is a big deal if you use, and things of that nature. But you try to do your best to keep things organized and only use certain cards for certain things, and try to pay your subcontractors or the people that you're contracting to do work on the building or on the property, upkeep, maintenance, managing. You want to make sure that you have everyone paid. Either 1099 is fine, but you want to be able to write them a W-2 at the end, 1099 at the end of the year, in order for that not to be, counted as income where, you can write it off as an expense.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we started, we were with in a mastermind, and then they were part, this other group was part of a consulting thing. It was attorneys and CPAs and like the full thing. And you need to do this and you need to do this. Right. And I had found myself in such a catastrophe of so many different LLCs. Each LLC has to have its own bank account. I mean, it was just horrendous. And I would cry when we started looking at the books over and over and again, because there was due to, froms, and you have to be so careful. I'm not an attorney. I've just been beat by the wayside when it comes to this, Chrissy. You have to be so careful that you don't create something so complicated that you fail in step one. Because when Chrissy G hits it on a personal injury case, those are the things that you're going to be looking for.
Right.
So it's so interesting. That's a big piece of like drawing in this. But those big things, taking care of the property, making sure you have the right policy, read your policy, understand the policy, build a good relationship with the insurance company, the insurance provider, and then making sure your entity is set up not only for the property, but for you and the way that you live, and you're able to maintain the entity just like the property, right?
Exactly.
Man, there's so much there. So I wish that I could have been told that about what 10
We
years
always learn
ago.
the hard way,
I know.
unfortunately, but
So where does this
hindsight's
leave?
2020.
Yeah, it's so easy, right? It's so easy. Where does this leave us now, Chrissy? I mean, the book's coming out in June. We're actually recording this in May, so in June the book's coming out. What's life look like for you right now? Are you still focused on buy and holds? You know, you've got that commercial brokerage. Are you holding multifamilies? I don't. As an attorney, you don't want to disclose
Sure.
too much, right? But listen in a little
I
bit.
may or may not have a few properties.
Yeah. And from
Yes,
New York at
definitely.
that. There's a whole nother language there.
Right? Exactly. You
Yeah.
always want to watch what you say, but I think that, you again learn the hard way with that as well. But realistically, it's good to diversify. The newest office that we just opened up in Hempstead is the newest acquisition that we did obtain as a new company and a new entity that the Grigoropoulos Law Group will be renting from. But that's one of the newest. I'm always looking for good deals. You always want to try to not leave money sitting in the bank. As much as it feels good to be like, hey, this is here, we have this cushion, it's great, but liquid never helps you. It will only hurt you, in theory, by just sitting there. It's basically like water. Lingering water is only going
Yeah.
to attract mosquitoes
Cash is
in theory,
depreciating too. Yeah, yeah.
so we always try to look for good deals. I love my standard fix and flip, even for a one family house to get it dirt cheap, maybe a foreclosure or a pre-foreclosure property. Those are great. Try to make a good relationship with your local contractor and, get a couple bids from a few different contractors. And I personally like designing my stuff myself because my father, started in this realm as a general contractor. So he worked his way up from, the bottom. So I enjoy going to Home Depot and picking out my stuff and going to the marble places and the granite and making things work. But from a hobby, it could be fun. It could be a little weekend project that you get help with and you're able to just make sure the margins make sense and you can continue growing at least a side business in that respect.
Yeah. Are you doing that in New York or are you doing that outside of that market?
I am doing it inside New York. It's the easiest for me because I'm a corporate broker here. So I'm able to
Right.
just, jump on MLS, the multiple listing service, as if it's Google and just click around if I'm, waiting for a hearing to start or,
Mhm.
things like that. It's a lot easier. I have looked a lot into Florida. The market has changed tremendously in the past less than 3 years, like skyrocketed, where I should be used to that being in New York, but it's pretty wild. Whereas I like being close to my investments. It's a little bit more difficult trying to allocate the duty it's still the East Coast, but from the north to the south, it's a little more difficult in that respect. But if you have someone that's near you, you can find further away investments. I just feel more comfortable to have more control and let's say reach
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for my
And
investments.
then the design piece too is fun, being able to put your boots on on the ground when you are designing, so you can feel the space, you can feel the
For
textures
sure.
and all of that stuff. It's really fun. I just thought, bounce back. I apologize for bouncing around the entity question again.
Sure.
Someone, even with an entity, you can be tried or sued personally
Of
on
course.
certain things. So that's just another frustrating point that I wanted to throw in there. Even when you feel like you've done everything and you maintained the entity and you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's, you can, for certain things related to like direct to seller, the Trace Act, I believe it was called, with the calling, do not call list and those kind of things, you can
Right.
still, in certain states, you can still be tried personally for things that have done in the business, even though you may have not done
Right.
anything, right? So there's so much to it, and thankful to have well-educated people who know the law, like you, Chrissy, that can help us either get made full or protect our entities as well too.
For sure, definitely. You definitely want to have managers and allocate the duties so you're not personally doing things where they can say, hey, you did this, even though it's a corporation. If you're the only one running it, you're the only one owning it, you're the only one doing everything, you're not acting like a corporation, you're just using it as a shield. So
Mhm.
you need to make sure that the appearance of the corporation is its reality. Assign officers, make sure that there's minutes every so often for a meeting and things of that nature. You're operating as a corporation instead of a sole proprietorship, which is really the best bet for personal liability.
Yeah, that's a huge piece right there too, because so many of these the LLCs, the limited liability corporations, are just single people, right?
Right.
And who may not
All three.
assign managers and who don't take
Exactly.
minutes. And I do my $300 every year to this .com that does my paperwork for me, and then how do I still protect myself? That's a huge piece.
For sure.
So this path on Lady Shark, what is the biggest takeaway that you could tell the listeners out there? I've seen this time and time again where it's like this self-doubt piece. We talk about mindset and that being the step one when it comes to changing your life, not following the masses, getting this freedom piece, what that means to you is to your own definition. But the
Exactly.
self-doubt piece constrains us. It holds us back. We are conditioned almost to have this instilled in us. What's the biggest takeaway that you could give to the listeners today with regard of stop the self-doubt?
I think that everyone laughs when I say it, but when you say you fake it till you make it, still be authentic with yourself. But if you don't believe in yourself, no one will. And you have to start from somewhere. I'm sure that people alike see someone in the professional title, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, or, the president or anyone else, you think of them as this prestige figure. But when you're walking that path yourself, you're like, well, no one knows what the hell we're doing until you do. So
Yeah.
I think that when you're stepping into a new title, a new position, a new venture, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but you have to push through that uncomfortability, be confident in yourself that if someone else did it, why can't you do it? The same way, if you can make it through school, why did someone else do it? If you can't, you'd be able to do it too. There's no restricting. And a lot of times we put those borders and those blinders on ourselves versus being open-minded and positive. The half glass full is really, going to impact the benefits and the success.
Yeah. And those limits inside are those limiting beliefs, these little walls that we've put up in our own brain. But that glass half full piece is understanding that our brain has these paths that we can either connect or disconnect. And the more that they fire together, the more they wire together. So keeping that focus on, hey, if that person did it, then it is possible, right? It's almost like that manifestation piece, getting into the neuroscience of the piece. I apologize to all the listeners who are neuroscience and, hey, have gone through neuroscience and know all this stuff. I don't. I just, I read the books every now and then, but it's fascinating to see what we have the choice to do. We have the choice to be happy. We have the choice to change. We have the choice to be free. It's all about what we set in our mind and then continue to believe.
One of my favorite quotes is, why not you?
Yeah.
Why not you?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you could go back, say 10 years, and you sat beside somebody on the same path as Chrissy G and was either in law or thinking about law, had some family in real estate, in the same area, generally speaking, geographically, what was something that you would tell that person, having the experience and the knowledge that you have now, going back, sitting beside that person, not you, somebody like you, what would you tell that person?
Just stay hungry, keep going. I think that along the way you do have the self-doubt, but as long as you have that hunger that drives you, I think that a lot of people have given me doubt, have said, you work too much, or you're trying too hard, or the work will always be there tomorrow. And I spent a lot of my life, I got married later in life. I'm 35 years old. I just got married a couple years ago, started a family a couple years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's really juggling a circus now for real. But I always wanted it younger, and I would look at other people's lives, and you really realize that you really can't look at other people and compare yourself. Although it may look beautiful, if I go back and compare myself to those people now, I'm way happier as a whole all around because of the way that you set yourself up. So I think the critics will always be there. And I think that giving advice to someone else, just because you're going to be criticized or critiqued by what you think are your peers later in life, you'll realize that your true peers will never criticize you. They'll just be cheerleaders. So basically look past the critics and just keep going.
That's right. Stay hungry, keep going, and only compare yourself to who you were yesterday, the day before that, because that's the comparison that matters. It's all about becoming a better person, not better than that person, but better than who I was yesterday.
Exactly.
Come on with it, Chrissy G. That's a good one. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
we are
so much.
wrapping around. Man, and if everybody wants the book, first of all, let me bring that back. That's theladyshark.com, right?
Yes.
And then the Instagram, where you have 50,000 plus followers. I was telling you before we started recording. That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
and you still communicate directly with people. So if they
Yes.
want to DM you, they can find you at Chrissy G Official. That's
Yes.
ChrissysYGoffFFICIAL
Yes.
at Instagram and follow your story. Follow who you are. You've got to go on Rockin' the NYC place, Rockin' New York,
Right.
multiple offices, author, real estate, family. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I always try to be an open book if anyone ever has questions, even if they seem not really substantial. It's always good to be able to give back. I've had a lot of mentors along the way, and it's always nice to ask someone a question that you think that you can just get a straight answer to.
That's awesome. And I thank you for that. And thank you for the listeners, for the ones who will reach out to you and follow with you. Like you were saying earlier, you never know when that relationship becomes, repetitive. You start seeing this person, you see him again, you talk to him again.
Oh, yeah.
And that value, the long lasting relationships are the value that kind of like take us by surprise sometimes.
For sure.
Thanks, Chrissy G. We appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much, Brad. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And to the listeners out there today, thank you again for your attention and the time that you've given us. There's so much here. Please go find this, theladyshark.com, find the book. It's releasing here in the mid-2024 season. And look up Chrissy G on Instagram. What a great conversation. I had a blast picking her brain on what to do, what not to do with the personal injury versus real estate world. So thanks, everybody. This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.